O.J. Simpson, he's no stranger to crowds, cheers, and jeers. And tonight, this embattled star finds himself in the public eye once again, facing life in prison, but testifying on camera for the very first time.
We were talking about hookers and drug people that I didn't want around my kids. Why am I the bad guy? Because I was angry about that.
More than 30 years after he was acquitted of murdering his ex-wife Nicole Brown and her friend Ron Goldman, the estate of O.J. Simpson has agreed to pay Goldman's father nearly $58 million.
For decades, O.J. Simpson lived under the shadow of public suspicion, labeled by many as the killer of his wife and best friend. Even after being found legally innocent, the doubt never disappeared. Now, following his death, his daughter Sydney has finally gathered the courage to speak out, revealing what many long suspected. What did she say, and how does it reshape everything we thought we knew about O.J.? Join us as we uncover the truth that has been hidden for years.
Earlier that evening,
I learned that in jail.
Stepping out of the shadows. O.J. Simpson's daughter, Sydney Brooke Simpson, grew up in the shadow of one of the most infamous figures in American history. As the youngest child of O.J. Simpson and Nicole Brown Simpson, her life has been a tragic combination of public scrutiny and the challenge of creating her own path separate from her father's legacy. Sydney was just a child when her mother was murdered. Her younger brother, Justin Ryan Simpson, was only 5 years old at the time. Following Nicole's death, Sydney and Justin were primarily raised by their mother's family, spending much of their childhood away from the media spotlight. As expected, Sydney's childhood was surrounded by trauma and upheaval. Losing her mother at such a young age left lasting emotional impacts, compounded by the intense media attention surrounding her father's criminal trial. Despite this, Sydney's family worked to provide stability and protect her from the spotlight, allowing her to grow up with a sense of normalcy where possible. Education became a central focus for Sydney as she grew older. She attended Boston University, where she earned a degree in sociology. Following graduation, Sydney explored a career in hospitality, managing restaurants, and working in event planning. Her choices showed a desire to establish her identity beyond the notoriety of her family. Sydney has also been involved in public speaking and philanthropic efforts, particularly in causes connected to domestic violence awareness, honoring her mother's legacy. But not once did she ever talk about the death of her mom or her dad's involvement. Her relationship with her father has been complex. While she has maintained contact over the years, she has been careful to establish emotional distance from his public persona and legal controversies. During his prison years, Sydney reportedly supported him privately, but has generally avoided public commentary on his actions or legacy. Despite trying to stay far away from the entire situation, the media attention surrounding Sydney has been relentless, and she has made her intention to lead a private life very clear. She rarely gives interviews, carefully manages her social media presence, and avoids public appearances. Despite her father's fame, she has chosen to define herself by her own accomplishments rather than by association with the Simpson name. Justin Simpson, Sydney's younger brother, also follows a similar path. He works in real estate and maintains a private life. While many believe Sydney was raised solely by her mother's family, she actually spent much of her childhood with her father as well. But how did this unusual arrangement affect her? And how did living under both roofs shape the way she viewed O.J. as a man and as a father? A complex living dynamics. It's true that Sydney was initially raised by Nicole's family, but after her father's acquittal in 1995, custody shifted back to him. The Browns, however, continued to fight for custody of both Sydney and her younger brother until 2006, when the children reached adulthood. Before his death, O.J. spoke about raising Sydney as a single parent, sharing insights on the challenges of parenting a daughter. He once revealed that girls' problems were often emotional, contrasting them with the simpler missteps he saw in boys. This realization made him take extra precaution before making decisions, including bringing another woman into the house, worrying that it might have affected Sydney in some ways. Despite these concerns, he praised her accomplishments, noting her lack of rebellious behavior, her honor student status, and acceptance into a reputable school. Justin, on the other hand, was described as a reflective child who often internalized his feelings. Even when faced with personal challenges, he preferred to handle them quietly. O.J. recalled trying to engage Justin in conversation about school or relationships, but the boy often reassured him, insisting he would be fine on his own. It was obvious O.J. was always trying to be there for his children and be whatever they needed, but things may not have been as peaceful as he made it sound, and evidence supporting that claim sparked a new wave of conversations. This all began to unravel when the producers of the 2024 Lifetime special revealed they had uncovered court documents showing multiple legal concerns during Sydney and Justin's time living with O.J. in Florida. According to the producers, there were roughly 17 police reports and numerous 911 calls related to possible domestic disturbances. Most calls were anonymous, and authorities were unable to verify the incidents, leaving the family and the public in uncertainty for years. But despite trying to stir the pot, O.J.'s children never made a negative comment about their father. In fact, their godfather, David Brobeck, also shared in April 2024 that both Sydney and Justin were leading stable, fulfilling lives. He described them as solid people and parents who are happy with life. This revelation painted a very different picture from the one the public has held of O.J. for decades. But it also raises a crucial question. Why has the world clung so tightly to this guilty image of him even after the court declared him innocent? The unraveling path of O.J. Simpson. October 3, 2025, made it 30 years since the trial of the century came to an end. Yet, the fascination with O.J. hasn't faded. Decades after the 1994 death of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman, the case remains unresolved, keeping the story alive in the public imagination. To understand why, let's start from the very beginning of O.J.'s rise to fame and downfall. His journey began long before the headlines. In the 1960s, O.J. was a rising star at the University of Southern California. Crowds watched with excitement as he sprinted across the field with incredible force and confidence. His talent made him a national sensation, and in 1968, he claimed the Heisman Trophy, becoming the face of college football. It felt like the beginning of a legendary chapter, and it was. In 1969, O.J. stepped into the NFL as the first overall draft pick, joining the Buffalo Bills. The league quickly learned what USC fans already knew. Season after season, he pushed his limits, but 1973 became the moment that defined him. That year, he broke barriers by rushing for over 2,000 yards, the first player in NFL history to do so. Fans saw him as unstoppable. By the time he retired in 1979, he had built a career full of remarkable highlights, eventually earning a place in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1985. But O.J. wasn't done capturing the spotlight. With football behind him, he moved effortlessly into Hollywood. Viewers recognized him from energetic Hertz commercials, and soon he was appearing in films like Capricorn 1, and later the lighthearted Naked Gun series. His charm made him a familiar screen presence, and it seemed he had smoothly reinvented himself once again. Behind the scenes, his personal life was changing. Before Hollywood fame, O.J. had 3 children with his first wife, Marguerite Whitley. Later, he met Nicole Brown, and in 1985, they began what looked like a bright new chapter together. Their photographs from the early years showed a glamorous couple moving through social circles with ease. They later welcomed 2 children, Sydney and Justin, adding to the picture of a growing family. But that was when the cracks began to form, and by 1992, the marriage came to an end. No one could have predicted what would follow. How did the world that once celebrated O.J.'s athletic achievements and Hollywood charm watch his life take a darker turn all in one night? The night that changed everything. June 12, 1994, began like any ordinary evening for Nicole Brown Simpson. This 35-year-old woman was out to have dinner in Los Angeles with her family, unaware that the night would soon turn into one of the most chilling moments in modern American history. Later that evening, Ron Goldman, a 25-year-old waiter from the same restaurant, went to Nicole's home to return a pair of glasses her mother had forgotten. It was a simple act of kindness that placed him at the wrong place at the wrong time. Around midnight, both Nicole and Goldman were found brutally stabbed outside her home. The scene was disturbing, and the violent nature of the crime instantly sent shockwaves across the city. At the time, O.J. Simpson was in Los Angeles, but he boarded a late flight to Chicago that same night. When he returned the following day, police questioned him, though no immediate arrest was made. The uncertainty only heightened the tension surrounding the case. Just days later, that tension erupted into one of the most surreal moments ever broadcast on live television. On June 17, 1994, prosecutors ordered O.J. to turn himself in. Instead of complying, he vanished, triggering confusion that quickly escalated into a national spectacle. He was soon spotted inside a white Ford Bronco driven by his longtime friend, Al Cowlings. What followed became an unforgettable chapter in American media. The chase was slow, almost eerie, as police cruisers tailed the Bronco down the busy Southern California freeways. News helicopters circled above, broadcasting every second to millions of viewers. Across Los Angeles, people gathered on overpasses, waving and watching the strange procession unfold beneath them. Inside their homes, families stopped whatever they were doing, glued to their screens as the chase cut into regular programming and spread across every major network. More than 90 million people watched in real time, making it one of the most viewed live events in history. The tension of the low-speed pursuit stood in stark contrast to the magnitude of the moment, transforming the freeway into a stage and O.J. into the center of a national drama. After 90 minutes of uncertainty, the Bronco finally came to a stop, and the chase ended with a surrender. O.J. stepped out and was taken into custody. That was the beginning of a case that would dominate the country for years to come. The series of events that followed roll leave you shocked. Why did O.J. run like a guilty man? What was his explanation? A trial that stopped the nation. By 1995, the story had grown far beyond a criminal case. It had become a national fixation. When O.J. Simpson stepped into the courtroom, millions watched every moment, turning the trial into a defining event of the decade. The proceedings stretched for months, filled with tense exchanges, and a constant media presence that kept the country glued to its screens. Inside the courtroom, the two sides painted very different pictures. The defense argued that O.J. had been falsely accused and that the investigation was riddled with errors and bias. They insisted he was a victim of a flawed process. Prosecutors, however, described a far darker story. They portrayed O.J. as a controlling husband who had a history of abusing Nicole Brown Simpson. They presented blood evidence from the crime scene found in his car and at his home. They also pointed out the unexplained gap of more than an hour in his timeline on the night of the murders. One of the most memorable moments was when the prosecutors asked O.J. to try on a pair of gloves believed to have been worn by the killer. The demonstration quickly became a turning point. The gloves appeared too small, creating doubt in front of the jury and giving the defense the momentum it needed. The nation watched as the trial moved toward its conclusion. After months of testimony and countless headlines, The decision finally arrived on October 3, 1995. In a verdict that stunned viewers across the country, O.J. was acquitted of all criminal charges. He continued to insist he had nothing to do with the murders, and the verdict ensured the criminal case was closed. But the story did not end there. 2 years later, the families of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman took their fight to civil court. In 1997, a civil jury reached a very different conclusion. They found O.J. liable for wrongful death and ordered him to pay more than $30 million in damages. It was during this period a shocking expose that revealed the events of the night Nicole and Ron were unveiled. What happened the night of their death? A bold admission. Mike Gilbert, a former friend and memorabilia dealer for O.J. Simpson, has made shocking claims in his tell-all book, alleging that O.J. confessed to unaliving his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, after his 1995 acquittal. Mike, who profited from O.J. for years, says the confession occurred at O.J.'s Brentwood home, weeks after the trial, when O.J. was reportedly under the influence of marijuana, alcohol, and a sleeping pill. According to Mike, O.J. admitted in a soft mumble that he had gone to Nicole's condominium on the night of June 12, 1994, without a knife. He claimed Nicole had a knife in her hand when she opened the door. O.J. allegedly said, if she hadn't opened that door with a knife in her hand, she'd still be alive. Gilbert asserts there was no doubt in his mind that O.J. had confessed. Mike also claims he played a role in O.J.'s defense strategy during the trial. He says he advised O.J. to stop taking arthritis medicine so his hands would swell, making it appear the gloves found at the crime scene did not fit. Gilbert writes that he helped O.J. wiggle out of the charges and assisted in hiding profits from memorabilia sales to prevent the Goldman family from seizing them in the civil wrongful death suit, which awarded $33.5 million. O.J.'s lawyer, Yale Gallanter, strongly denied Mike's claims, calling him a delusional drug addict who needs money, and insisting the allegations were not supported by evidence. Gallanter refused to allow O.J. to comment directly, citing the timing of his upcoming robbery trial in Las Vegas. In addition to the confession claim, Mike recounts how he and other O.J. friends ignored signs of domestic violence between O.J. and Nicole. He says fights and police calls were often dismissed or rationalized due to their fascination with O.J.'s fame and the fringe benefits of being part of his circle. Mike's book comes after other controversial publications, including Thomas Riccio's Busted, which detailed O.J.'s armed robbery arrest in Las Vegas, and O.J.'s own If I Did It, a hypothetical account of the murders that was later published by the Goldman family to help satisfy the civil judgment. Gilbert frames his book as a confession and a reckoning with his past, acknowledging the moral compromises he made in enabling O.J. He offers apologies to the Goldman family and Nicole Brown Simpson, though attorney David Cook emphasized that financial restitution, not apologies, remains the priority. Just when it seemed the public attention might fade, O.J.'s life veered into another chapter, a Las Vegas arrest that returned him to national headlines. What exactly happened in Vegas, but didn't stay in Vegas?
I had a joke that my doctor says I should never have an empty glass, is what I would tell the waitress, so we were celebrating.
A fall in Las Vegas. More than a decade after the trial that defined his public image, O.J. Simpson found himself at the center of another explosive incident. In September 2007, he entered a Las Vegas hotel and casino with a group of men, determined to reclaim sports memorabilia he insisted belonged to him. What he viewed as a personal retrieval quickly escalated into a chaotic confrontation. Witnesses later described a tense scene marked by shouting and the presence of weapons, turning the situation into something far more serious than O.J. claimed it to be. Authorities moved swiftly. O.J. was charged with several felony counts including kidnapping and armed robbery. The incident drew national attention, not only because of his past, but because of the aggressive nature of the encounter. By the time the case went to trial, it was clear that this moment would become one of the most defining chapters of his later life. In 2008, a jury found O.J. guilty on all major charges connected to the botched robbery. During sentencing, Judge Jackie Glass expressed sharp criticism of his actions. She described the confrontation as violent, emphasizing that at least one gun had been drawn and that the potential for harm had been tremendous. She made it clear that this was not a simple attempt to retrieve personal belongings, but a dangerous event marked by force and intimidation. O.J. apologized, telling the court he had not realized he was breaking the law. His words, however, did little to change the outcome. He was sentenced to as many as 33 years in prison. Prison became O.J.'s reality for years. In 2013, he attempted to secure a new trial, but the request was rejected. That same year, he was granted parole on some charges due to good behavior, yet he remained behind bars because the sentences were ordered to run consecutively. It meant waiting longer for any chance at release. O.J. did not appear before the parole board again until 2017, continuing a long and difficult stretch shaped by the consequences of that night in Las Vegas. However, his sentence was not forever, and he soon stepped his feet beyond the prison walls, but the world he met wasn't the one he left behind. What changed? A return to the outside world. By the summer of 2017, O.J. Simpson had spent nearly a decade behind bars, living through one of the most dramatic downfalls in modern American history. When he finally appeared before the Nevada Parole Board in July of that year, the hearing carried an intense mix of anticipation and uncertainty. The parole board listened as O.J. revisited the Las Vegas confrontation that had changed the course of his life. He described how he learned that several men were trying to sell items he believed were personal mementos, items he insisted held deep sentimental value. According to him, a series of unexpected circumstances brought all the involved parties to Las Vegas at the same time, creating what he described as an unfortunate collision of events. O.J. explained that he had traveled to the city for a wedding when someone informed him that his belongings were nearby. He told the board that the individuals holding the items were people he once considered friends, men who had even helped him move and store some of the property years earlier. When he entered the hotel room, he said he saw his personal possessions laid out across the space, pieces of his past scattered openly. The only items that did not belong to him were several baseballs, and he made it clear that he wanted nothing more than the boxes and memorabilia he believed were already legally ruled as his. As he spoke, O.J. showed a sense of remorse. He reminded the board that he had avoided making excuses throughout his time in prison, and was not seeking to do so now. When asked directly whether he believed the property was his, he pointed out that the state of California had already affirmed his ownership. He insisted he had not gone to the room with the intention of stealing from anyone. O.J. also assured the board that he could handle the responsibilities and restrictions of parole. He stated that he had never lived a criminal lifestyle and acknowledged that his past failings were rooted in personal behavior, not lifelong misconduct. He described himself as someone who generally got along with others, hoping to convince the board that he posed no threat if released. The decision finally came. O.J. was granted parole, with the earliest release date set for October 1, 2017. When that day arrived, he walked out of Lovelock Correctional Institute as a free man. At 70 years old, he left prison quietly, accompanied only by staff and officials. His attorney said O.J. wanted to enjoy the simple pleasures he had been denied for 9 years. Another close friend told reporters that O.J. planned to spend time with family, reconnect with his children, and return to playing golf, an activity he had long enjoyed. O.J. moved to Las Vegas after his release. Although he kept a low physical profile, he became active on social media, especially on Twitter, where he frequently shared comments on current events. His presence online attracted attention, as people remained divided on how to view him. For some, he was a sports legend. For others, he remained a figure tied to one of the most controversial criminal cases in American history. His story reached its final chapter in April 2024. After battling prostate cancer, O.J. died on April 10th at age 76. His family announced his passing through a short message, saying he had been surrounded by his children and grandchildren. Despite his family requesting privacy as they navigated their loss, the public wasted no time sharing their opinions. So, what were the reactions to his death? The public's divided opinions. Reactions to O.J. Simpson's death began spreading slowly, almost like ripples in a quiet pond. One voice after another, on TV, in newspapers, and across social media, added to the noise, each one showing how divided people still are about the man whose life became one of America's biggest controversies. Carl E. Douglas, one of O.J.'s defense attorneys, spoke after the news broke. He said O.J.'s story was far from simple. It was tangled, emotional, and deeply connected to America's history with race and justice. For many Black Americans, the acquittal wasn't really about O.J. himself. It was about finally seeing a system that had so often failed them show, even once, that a Black legal team could win a historic case. Douglas called it a watershed moment, something that marked a shift in how people viewed fairness, power, and the courtroom. But not everyone shared that feeling. David Cook, the attorney who spent years trying to collect the civil settlement for the Brown and Goldman families, spoke bluntly. He said O.J. died without penance and made it clear he wasn't stopping his pursuit of what the families were owed. Ron Goldman's father, Fred Goldman, also reacted with raw honesty. To him, O.J.'s death was simply another heavy moment in a lifetime of missing his son. And so, as the world reacts once again, O.J.'s name continues to stir. The same storm of emotions it always has: praise, anger, pain, debate. A legacy both powerful and fractured that it refuses to fade quietly into history. More voices continued to join the growing wave of reactions after O.J. Simpson's death. Attorney Alan Dershowitz, who had advised O.J.'s defense team during the 1994 murder trial, spoke with a heaviness. He said he had known O.J. was seriously ill, but the news still saddened him. During the trial, he had gotten to know O.J. well, and he remembered how the case split the entire country. Celebrities also stepped forward. On The View, the hosts opened the show with the news. Whoopi Goldberg delivered it simply, then allowed the conversation to widen, drifting back to the trial and what it meant. Sunny Hostin, who is both a co-host and a lawyer, shared something deeply personal. She said that watching the outcome of O.J.'s case had pushed her toward law. To her, the acquittal felt like a heavy wrong, something she carried with her into her career. Alyssa Farah Griffin nodded in agreement. She believed the acquittal was a miscarriage of justice, and her thoughts went straight to the families of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman. She hoped that O.J.'s passing might bring them even a small sense of peace, though she admitted no verdict or civil settlement could ever truly make up for their loss. Then came a much sharper reaction. Caitlyn Jenner, who had once been tied to O.J.'s world through her then-wife Kris Jenner and Kris's late husband Robert Kardashian, a member of O.J.'s defense team, shared a short message online. Just 2 words: good riddance. But while most focused on the controversy tied to his name, some chose to focus on the positives. For instance, Jim Porter, president of the Professional Football Hall of Fame, reflected on O.J.'s athletic achievements. He reminded the public that O.J. had once shattered expectations by becoming the first player to rush for more than 2,000 yards in a 14-game season, a mark many believed was impossible. Porter said that whatever people may think about O.J.'s later life, his on-field accomplishments would remain preserved in the Hall of Fame archives in Canton, Ohio. Across social media, several NFL players shared brief messages after hearing of his passing. Javon Holland, Eric Ebron, and Darius Slayton simply wrote, "Rest in peace," acknowledging the complicated legacy of a man whose early brilliance was overshadowed by later turmoil. However, his reputation as a talented sportsman, whose name is placed in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, sparked another conversation. Would he continue to be celebrated despite his tainted reputation? Celebrating the player amid controversy. The answer is straightforward. O.J. Simpson's place in the Pro Football Hall of Fame remains secure, despite the controversies that followed his life after football. His legacy in the Hall is focused solely on his achievements as a player, leaving debates about his character separate from his athletic accomplishments. The Hall of Fame does not include a character clause, meaning off-field behavior does not disqualify an inductee. This framework has allowed O.J.'s bust to remain among other legendary players, regardless of the turmoil in his personal life. O.J.'s induction was in 1985, the first year he was eligible. By that time, he had already established himself as one of the NFL's most dominant running backs. Over an 11-season career, mainly with the Buffalo Bills, he led the league in rushing yards 4 times and earned 5 first-team All-Pro selections. He retired as the second leading rusher in NFL history, behind only Jim Brown, and achieved remarkable milestones, including being the first player to rush for 2,000 yards in a single season. He remains the only player to accomplish this feat in a 14-game schedule, and is the only NFL player to rush for over 200 yards in a game 6 times. The Hall of Fame's bylaws clarify that the election criteria focus solely on contributions and performance as a player, coach, or contributor in professional football. Character judgments, while often discussed in public and media debates, are intentionally excluded from the selection process. This ensures that players like O.J., who achieved extraordinary success on the field, retain their place among the sport's elite. Figures such as Deion Sanders have suggested that O.J.'s accomplishments merit recognition at the highest level of the Hall, highlighting his enduring influence as one of the greatest running backs of all time. His career achievements continue to be preserved in Canton, Ohio, ensuring that his contributions to professional football are not forgotten. Is there an iota of truth in Mike Gilbert's confession? If O.J. was the perpetrator of the crime, is it possible that the killer is still alive and hiding in plain sight? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.